I'm here with Greta Aurora, and we're going to talk about this latest. God, I don't know what to say. Like, it is really outrageous. This documentary about Marilyn Manson that has just premiered at Sundance, and basically it's a two-part documentary, and the entire thing, as it turns out, is about Marilyn Manson, depicting him as this horrible abuser. And then Evan Rachel Wood and some of the other women who are accusing him, of course, are painted in a great light. So it's basically just a telling of their story, their accusations against Manson. Anyway, and I just wanted, what we're going to do is we're going to get into some clips. We're going to look at some clips from the film that you probably haven't seen, and we're going to talk about them. But I just wanted to kind of give you our general impression right now. Greta, I don't know about you. I want to hear from you in a minute what you think. But like I said, I think what was really amazing to me as I was watching this is that they were so brazen. The director and Evan Rachel Wood, they were so brazen in this documentary in putting out all kinds of lies and misrepresentations that are actually easily refutable, as Marilyn Manson's attorney said in the statement that he released after. And, even we're going to talk about in a moment, even with the groupie video, putting that in there, I mean, that's been refuted for a while. And so what I came away from it thinking was that we have really reached a new low in society and in the media and in our culture, where people feel so comfortable with using the Me Too shield that they feel like they can put out this outrageous material that has been discredited and refuted in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, the general public is not going to know that, and the media is not going to report it. And that's the problem. That's the frustration. But it is incredible how much mileage these women, and Evan Rachel Wood specifically, have gotten out of this hoax so far. What do you think?
Well, I know a lot of Manson supporters feel very depressed about this documentary, and it has brought a lot of people down, and they think it's a very bad sign and all that. But I don't feel that pessimistic about it, to be honest. There are a couple of new things that Evan Rachel Wood seems to have kept to first talk about in this documentary that she hasn't yet touched upon. But there aren't that many new things. There aren't that many new points raised that she hadn't already said somewhere. I think the only bad thing about it is that it exposes more people to this ridiculous story and to her allegations. More people get to hear about it. More people get to condemn Manson for the allegations before he'd have a chance to have a trial. I mean, she hasn't even sued him yet, so or she probably won't. It's all a media takedown. So, but then having a larger audience also means that hopefully more people will question what she has to say. I mean, logically, the more people get to hear it, the more questions will ultimately be raised. And that's obviously not what we have seen so far. I mean, no one has dared, no journalist has really dared to ask her any of the accusers any hard questions. But still, I mean, I don't think the media exposure in itself really worsens the situation,
I guess
compared to what it already was.
Yeah, I guess I just wonder at what point the pile-on becomes so substantial that it's just that Manson is just buried, in this. But anyway, again, I appreciate your optimism, and I don't want to be too pessimistic. It's just it's more like I just am amazed at where we're at right now with the media, because I really do, like we talked about, I really do think Manson is like the canary in the coal mine for these larger changes occurring in the media and in our culture and everything. And I just think we're going to be seeing more of this. We do have some clips. Actually, Greta was so nice as to not only watch the documentary, but to get some clips for us. And so she chose some things that she thought were interesting. And I haven't actually seen some of these. I've seen some of them, and I've seen the documentary, but I haven't seen some of the clips that she's chosen since then. So I'll be interested to see and respond as well. She's a kid. Huh?
Yeah, so I think what we can see here is that they're setting her up as this almost angelic being in that cute little dress. I don't know anything about Westworld, but I guess it's a clip from that, right? And she's walking amongst all these crosses as a saint, literally.
Yeah, well, in Westworld, she's a victim of abuse, of sustained abuse as well, and she stands to stand up against it and all that. Go on, yeah.
What do you make of her claims that she received all these threats? I mean, I guess it's to be expected. There are lots of crazy people out there. There will be people who send nasty messages, but
Yeah,
they make a bigger deal out of that, I think, than it really is.
I mean, as someone who, on a much smaller scale, has been in the public eye, and I think that I've made a lot of enemies from defending Manson and going after these accusers. I have received nothing that has frightened me in any way. I would say the extent of it would be maybe occasionally a couple of comments like "fuck you, bitch" or whatever. You might need to mute that. Sorry if you're trying to monetize this, but anyway, my point is though, like who knows? Yeah, there might be a few crazy people, but that doesn't validate what she's doing against Manson. It doesn't matter how many death threats she might be receiving. If she's going after someone who is innocent, that doesn't validate it. Yeah. It's not like she can say, "Oh, it's fine that I'm going after this guy who didn't actually do these things because look at all these death threats I'm getting." You know, Manson's not sending the death threats, but who knows? If she's so twisted in the head as to believe some of the things she's saying, which I still am not sure. I'm still trying to figure out if she knows that she's lying or if she's that twisted she doesn't. But if she truly believes some of the stuff she's saying, she might truly fear him. I don't know. I mean, do you think that she knows what she's doing, or do you think it's that calculated, or do you think that this is someone who has a severe personality disorder or something where they have a distorted view of reality?
I think on a superficial level, she probably believes a lot of this stuff. Whether she actually knows deep down what she's doing, she probably does. But I do think she's quite delusional. And yeah, I do actually think a lot of it she actually believes. But, you know, I mean, in this whole documentary, she claims to have a lot of evidence, actual evidence against Manson, and she still hasn't shown any of that. But if she really did have evidence showing that he ever threatened her family, then, you know, he wouldn't actually act on those threats. There's just no way that would be an incredibly stupid thing to do, because then all threats would lead to him. It would be very obvious. And, you know, so, I mean, the whole thing is kind of just to set it up so that she gets to explain why she waited that long. She was living in fear for that many years, because that's one thing a lot of people, like most people watching it, will wonder about, I guess. Even people who are completely supportive of her, like, why wait 7 or 8 years or however long it was?
Right. Yes, and maybe in some ways she was less mature than him, but I don't think that they're painting this as like almost a pedophilic relationship, and that this guy was so much that she knew nothing of the world. She was just an innocent babe in the woods. And it's really disingenuous, really.
I mean, they do keep talking about grooming throughout. And I mean, the whole documentary really is just one long cry of her saying how young she was. I mean, that really is the thread that runs through the whole thing. And we talked about it before, but, you know, you can't have a functioning legal system if you can't set an age of consent, if you can't have certain barriers beyond which everyone, you know, should kind of be expected to be accountable, at least to some extent, for the decisions they make in life.
Right. And I noticed how too in this documentary, I noticed how they never interview her in the documentary about the abuse that she suffered. It's all about this idea of mental, psychological coercion and manipulation. And she'll say, like, she says, well, do you have a clip when she talks about meeting him? Were we going to look at that? Is that one you have or no?
Yes, I have the Alice in Wonderland bit.
Can we look at that one?
Well, let's just go kind of chronologically.
So, okay, fine. So you can cut this out, but let me just say, so yeah, in that clip that we're going to watch in a little while, we'll talk about this in a moment, but you know, the way she talks about how they started dating and everything, as if it was all him just manipulating her every step of the way. She had no agency. Anyway, you have another clip for us? Well, I've got some news for her. First of all, like you go through your entire life, you may not know who you are. I mean, that's not a problem that is just specific to young people. Some of us, that's why I have like midlife crises and stuff. Some of us are still trying to figure it out. It's like she's pathologizing everything. I don't know. It's very annoying. What do you think about this clip?
Well, throughout this segment, I was waiting for her to say the word exploitation, and that's really what she's getting at. And she's blaming the film industry, this machinery, the Hollywood machinery, for exploiting her as a child and typecasting her into characters that were more mature than she really was in life. But I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's your job as an actress, I guess. You don't have to say yes to a role. I mean, no one trafficked her into a film studio and forced her to act against her will. I guess her parents probably. So it's also kind of shot at her parents for, I guess.
It's interesting you say that.
She talked about her upbringing and how she was always expected to just get on with it, basically, and just accept things that happened to her. So it's just more excuses, just setting up the scene for basically why no one should dare ask her questions about her responsibilities in life for her choices, because this is how she was forced to grow up, that she just had to accept those uncomfortable situations. So she apparently she never developed a mechanism to say no, to stand up for herself. And again, what I said previously about having a legal system, you are either an adult or you are not. There's no gray areas. The law is pretty black and white when it comes to these things. So unless she claims to be mentally challenged, like not like literally, at the level of a child as an adult.
Right.
As a sort of mental disability, unless she claims that, it's not really an excuse, because in the eyes of the law, you are still an adult, and you can't just keep saying that you were a child at 18 or 19.
Yeah, and you can't be, and again, if not 18 or 19, it's 21, okay, 22, 23, it is subjective, and that's why we do have a law. What I'm concerned about is the way in which a number of feminists and activists and people like Evan Rachel Wood and the filmmaker are trying to basically infantilize women and keep setting the clock back in a way as to at what age women are mature, functional, psychologically functional adults. And look, if we want to keep raising, I guess I should say raising the age on that in our minds, then we have to understand that that's going to come with a lot of negative perceptions about women. Because if you're trying to tell me that a woman who is 18 or 19 is not competent to make decisions about romance and about love, and it wasn't that they were just fucking either, okay? The guy, by all accounts, he really loved her, and they had, it was like, he was writing songs about her, he was paying her. She was the highest paid actress at the time to be in a music video. He made sure that happened. So, this was a real relationship. Call it, whatever you think of it, it was love. And to paint him as just kind of some predator who was trying to hook up with, a young girl. But my point that I was making earlier is, if we want to say now that an 18 or 19-year-old woman is not competent to make those kinds of decisions, well, then she's not competent to make other decisions. I guess there's all kinds of things that 18 and 19-year-old women shouldn't be doing. I guess we'll just go back to like,
should be allowed to drive a car or live on her own.
Saudi Arabia,
sign a contract.
Right. Own property, whatever, open a business. How old do you have to be to go in the military?
And this used to be, I mean, you hit the nail on the head about like, setting with the clock and stuff, because this used to be the justification for coverture and for women not being allowed to sign contracts or to have a bank account or to be able to vote, because they were irrational. They were considered to forever be at the level of a child. And this is literally what she's reverting back to.
I can tell you, I remember when I went to college and I was 18, I remember my mindset at that point, and even being naive as I was an adult, and I was fully in control of the sexual and romantic choices that I was making. Now, did I have the sophistication of a 40-year-old? Would I go back now as a 40-year-old woman and hook up with or date some of the men that I dated back then? No, but that's part of life. you're always reassessing as you go through life. You know, I'll look back 10 years from now at some of the things I'm doing right now, and I'll be like, damn, that was stupid or whatever, right? So, you know, what I see, and I've talked to my college students about this when I taught college, what I see increasingly among young people, and or even among like some of these Me Too activists, like Evan Rachel Wood, what I see increasingly is a refusal to accept the fact that sexuality is, by its nature, it's full of ambivalences, and there's going to be times you're going to do things sexually that you're not going to be afterward. You might feel weird about or whatever. And I just wonder how much of this with Evan Rachel Wood is that she's now changed into a very different person, you know, and you know, had her most recent romantic relationship was a woman, and now she's reassessing some of this stuff with Manson, and she's projecting it all on him. He manipulated me into dating him. He manipulated me into doing the racy music video. He manipulated me into the drugs, and it's all about disavowing all of her weird choices and putting it on him. And so anyway, the thing about how old she was, also, that's not Manson's fault. He was following the law. There's no indication that he's only, you know, gone after younger women. He's dated women, you know, who are in their 30s and whatever. So, you know, it's not his fault that some people may think that 18 or 19 is too young. And so it's ridiculous.
This is one of the new revelations. She never mentioned it before, that she'd still dated Jamie Bell at the time. So now she's basically blaming Manson, not only for grooming her, but also for breaking up their relationship. Now, later there's a brief mention that he just happened to be married at the time, but obviously she had no role in
well,
the marriage, but Manson was trying to break her relationship up.
Well, and notice how she uses, look, everybody knows this trick that when you're with one person but you're really not into that person anymore, and there's someone else you want. You know, years ago, back in the day, before my current relationship, I had this situation. There was a guy that I was with, but I was kind of like tired of him or whatever. There was another guy I wanted to be with. We were hanging out as friends. And guess what I would do? I would complain to the other guy a lot. I'm not proud of this, but you know, it is what it is. I would complain to the other guy a lot about the guy I was with, as a kind of a way of signaling to him, hey, you know, this relationship that I'm in, it's really not that, it's not going to last or whatever. And if you'd like to be in a relationship with me, then I'll break up with this guy. That may sound bad or whatever, but you know, all's fair in love and war. Sometimes we do, you know, we do things that are not insensitive. But my point to you is this: that's what she was doing. It's so obvious that's what she was doing when she was confiding to Manson about how her relationship with Jamie Bell was rocky. But notice how she disavows that and again projects it onto Manson. She said, "Oh, I just wanted his advice." And the mom even says that. She's like, she was wanting his mentorship, his advice. Give me a break. Nobody believes that. So that's my issue with that.
Yeah, the main reason I wanted to show that is because I find it interesting that she never talked about having still dated Jamie at the time. So some people might find that interesting.
Yeah, and of course she shows us a picture of them looking very innocent, like almost like two kids dating each other. You know, where's Edward Norton in this documentary? No mention is ever made of him. And she dated Edward Norton, right? Before she dated Manson, and he was what, 30 something years old? So, you know, there's whole parts of her history that are being erased. Yeah, what is up with the ridiculous octopus, the ridiculous tentacles coming out? That, to me, that was actually one of the worst parts of the animation. It was one of the worst parts of this documentary. And the fact that the way that they're depicting, you know, okay, so I'll tell you what I think happened. They've been collaborating all this time. They have a romantic chemistry going. She's been dropping all these hints to Manson that her relationship with Jamie Bell is not good. She's been flirting with him, whatever. And so then, you know, their last night working together, he makes his move. He leans in for a kiss. And you notice what she doesn't say? She doesn't say, I said no. She doesn't say, I backed away. I pushed him away, whatever. No, she evidently kisses him back. That's how it works. And so I guess, you know, what I want to say just quickly, and then say whatever you want, is that I see this repeated pattern with her in this documentary of taking consensual acts and making them sound non-consensual because supposedly Manson was using psychological coercion and manipulation on her. Well, that, you know, that used to be called courtship. honestly. And I don't like the way that this is being reframed as and psychological manipulation. So what we're saying is that women are weaker than men psychologically and intellectually. Again, none of this makes these arguments that they're making in this documentary. They're not making women look good. Women are these infantile things that are easily manipulated, that can't say what they want or what they don't want. They have no agency. So anyway, what do you think, Greta?
I mean, the imagery they're using in the animation is really messed up. And I mean, she's depicted as Alice, as this prepubescent girl. And I keep talking about Persephone, but that's literally what we're seeing there. The two of them,
Tell me a little about
sitting side by side on thrones, as if he had been this dark figure, like literally like a dark lord who seduced her and led her astray into the
right.
underworld, trapped her in that darkness, and then started reaching out into her, you know, like literally reaching into her like tentacles, like an alien sort of thing that invaded her body and mind. I mean, the way they're depicting it is obviously they're making it into something very, very serious, where, as you said, I think very rightly, it was just a kiss. I mean, they're way over dramatizing what literally was the first kiss, which is meant to be a romantic moment, when two people first realize that they really have that chemistry for each other.
And she even admits it throughout the documentary. She says, I wanted his friendship. I wanted his professional support, mentorship. I wanted this and that. I didn't find him attractive. You know, well, it's not on him that you didn't find him attractive, and that you were ambivalent about it, and that maybe you were with him for reasons, for a number of reasons, but maybe part of you wasn't totally on board. I mean, all of that's your own psychodrama, Evan Rachel Wood. That's not on Manson, and it doesn't make him an abuser. Now, I know there were a couple of scenes in the film where they showed clips from her testimony before the California Assembly and her testimony to Congress, in which she did make allegations of actual abuse, you know, like rape and like physical harms and stuff like that. I just think that it's really interesting, though, that that's all we get in this documentary in terms of actual abuse allegations. But in terms of what they actually interview her about in this documentary, she never accuses him of anything other than this kind of psychological coercion or manipulation. And I would just wonder if there's a reason for that, if that's because you know, maybe she realizes, or the filmmaker realizes, that she's on shaky ground with those accusations of abuse, and they don't want to be repeating those, or they don't want to be putting new accusations out there. So we'll just show these couple of clips from her testimony where she doesn't even name Manson. You know, we have to remember that when she did her testimony in front of the California Assembly and in front of Congress, she never named Manson. That was back when she wouldn't name her abuser. And so, you know, actually in the documentary, there is no place where she specifically names Manson or she connects Manson specifically to actual abuse. I think that's interesting.
There's a single instance, like when she brings up a specific case that could be classified as physical assault. We'll come to that, but that's not an act of sexual assault anyway. But let's go to the next. I mean, it's very messed up. I mean, being raped on camera, being coerced into a commercial sex act, these are very, very serious allegations. And obviously there's a parallel there with Esme Bianco's allegations about her music video experience. But beyond that, and that's a video that was never really released, and there are no witnesses to that. So it's not like we don't even know exactly what happened in that instance. And how many music videos has he made? I mean, no one, not a single actress who appeared in any of those videos has come forward to say that it was unprofessional in any way. So what she's suggesting here is that the whole set was set up the way it was to basically facilitate her abuse and her rape. I mean, that's basically what she's saying. That was the whole point of doing that music video and paying her the amount she was paid, which they don't mention in the documentary, obviously, but she was at the time the best paid actress for a music video.
Yeah, that doesn't get mentioned. Well, there's to me there's several issues here. So one is the issue of, did it actually happen? Did they have actual intercourse? She has claimed before in interviews that they did not. Others have claimed that it did not. Then you also have like one lone anonymous voice. I think it's the person who was quoted in Rolling Stone, and also the person that Evan Rachel Wood's mother is quoting here, who said that there was some moments of actual intercourse. I think that it's a muddle, and we don't know. It seems like from what I've read, it's more likely that there wasn't. But to me, it's kind of secondary then to the issue of, well, was there abuse of her? I don't have a problem with porn or people having sex on camera or whatever. So to me, the issue is, was it rape, as she says? Now, they had already been dating. They had already had sex. I understand that when people are in a sexual relationship, even if they've had sex before, that consent is needed every time. That I know your husband can rape you and all of that, right? I know that's possible, but it does create a precedent when someone is in a relationship where they're having sex. It does create a kind of expectation that sex will continue to be okay. So let's just say hypothetically that Marilyn Manson, let's just say hypothetically that it was actual sex on camera. I don't see where the rape is. It sounds like she was participating in the sexualized thing, and then if he did, which I don't think he did, but if he did, then he penetrated her and they had some moments of intercourse. To me, that seems very in line with the edgy persona that she had been cultivating ever since she started dating him, and with what she was trying to get across in the music video and whatever. Now she's trying to paint it as like, I didn't want any of that. But guess what? She doesn't tell us. She doesn't tell us that she said no. And honestly, I've seen people posting online and stuff who were on set and who say that there was no intercourse, and that generally has been the consensus up to this point. And even it's what she said before, and now we're just supposed to discount what she said. Well, there's only so much that I can discount what you said in all these interviews, Evan Rachel Wood. What you're trying to say is that every interview in which you've ever said anything nice about Manson or about your relationship, that you were lying. I mean, yeah, but again, she makes reference to it there, domestic violence. But again, we're not given in this documentary any actual descriptions of real violence. The only thing that I noted was when she said that he was on tour and he pulled her arm, he pulled her into a room. Well, again, I don't know the context of that.
We have a clip about that too.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
We'll see the broader context there. But I think this is just so confusing here, because at first she says that this was the first act of violence committed against her, the first crime and the first act of violence. And then a moment later she says that at this point she still hadn't realized she was suffering domestic violence.
Oh, that's a great note. That's a great.
Maybe it's just bad editing, but had no one picked up on that during the editing process? It makes no sense chronologically. Like the best example of that is the Nylon essay, where she talks about her checking herself into this institution, basically this recovery clinic, and then how she was reborn and all that. And then if you look at the timeline, she did end up going back to Manson after that. So yeah, but the biggest problem with what she says here is that, again, all we can do is go by what she says, and basically she's covering for those questions that could possibly ask why she was praising Manson during that time, why she was saying that this was the most romantic experience of her life, this music video. Basically there was not a single thought she had, a single word she uttered during that time that wasn't a result of this systematic manipulation by Manson.
There's something known as a presumption of innocence. Everyone is entitled to it unless and until evidence is given that shows that person is probably guilty. And so as I'm weighing in my mind, the pros and the cons, or the arguments for and against Manson, I can't discount all of these things in his favor. And I have yet to see anything from the other side. And anyway, I guess what I'm saying is that I think there's more than enough reason to think, to doubt her, to really doubt her. And these interviews are part of that.
I think another problem here is that on the one hand, she's saying that she hadn't realized what was happening to her at the time at all. She hadn't recognized it as abuse. On the other hand, she's claiming that she was living in fear to the extent that she was censoring what she was telling the press. she was lying about everything, about every aspect of the relationship, about the music video. Like, how do you reconcile those two things? I mean, how naive can you be at the age of 19 to be living in constant fear, which must really affect a person's ability to function on a daily basis? It must give you horrific anxiety that other people must notice too. I mean, how long can you live in that state without recognizing that something is wrong and that you are being mistreated? I mean, it just, it just doesn't add up to me at all.
Right.
Yeah, we see the obvious problem here. She's presenting it as though these women had just happened to, by chance, reach out to her after recognizing her testimony, the person she was talking about as Manson. But we know that pretty much all of the accusers or their allegations come from a time when Ashley Waters was his personal assistant. She is the common denominator here. I mean, I met her, and I'm pretty certain she was the one who passed my details on to Ian McGore, who then emailed me and tried to recruit me as a victim. And she probably succeeded at recruiting a lot of the women. So she's completely basically misconstruing the situation. And someone raised a very good point about this online. There's a website called Marilyn Manson Uncancelled. I don't know if you saw their review of the documentary, but he raises a very good point that basically what happens here, what she's talking about, is that he had taken too much of this medication. He basically overdosed in this medication. He was completely out of it. So basically she still manages to make herself out to be the victim, but what she should have really done is call an ambulance. I mean, this is, a serious, I think this to me sounds like a medical emergency. When someone becomes violent as a result of taking too much medication, that's a serious thing. And she was the one who wasn't looking after him, Yeah,
you could argue that. Also, typically taking a lot of Vicodin doesn't make someone agitated, like taking cocaine or something. But I guess people can always have reactions. But generally, if you swallow...
Why would she mention that? I mean, she mentions that fact as being relevant. We must then again run with what she's saying and accept that drug must have had some sort of an impact. I mean, she's saying that, she might have been better off not mentioning that at all. I mean, I don't know why she did. It would, I think, induce more sympathy if she just said that this was a burst of anger that happened out of the blue. She even mention the drug, it makes sense. So the reason I wanted to include this is because it's infuriating to me personally that she's basically suggesting that if Manson finds a woman, reaches out to a woman on a social media site or on a modeling site, the way he reached out to me, that woman must necessarily be too naive and delusional to be able to stand up for herself, to be able to recognize what's happening to her as abuse, assuming he ends up abusing her. And I just think this is very condescending, again, towards women in general, just to say that if you lie, if you adore or respect or like an artist, that basically completely clouds your judgment. Like there's absolutely no way, that women could still think rationally about the situation. And they see it as their responsibility to protect these women, and the urgency is great. That's how the first part of the documentary ends. Even though all the allegations come from like around an average like 10 years ago, something like that. So I mean, there haven't been any recent allegations. I mean, it's not like they're claiming that he's been doing this to women years.
Very,
what urgency is she talking about?
Right.
Well, obviously they have to make that point, otherwise there's why are they making the documentary in the first place? So there's their whole premise that they must protect future victims. Although the best way, I mean, if someone commits a crime against you, the best thing to do is to, if you really care about what's going to happen to other people, then the best thing to do is to report it as soon as possible to prevent that person.
Well, of course, they have all these reasons and everything why they can't. I have no problem with the idea of somebody trying to expose an abuser. I just think that they're lying. I think they're wrong. So anyway.
Right. As I said, I'm an art director, designer, and artist. And I met Manson for the first time in 2003. in Philadelphia. I met him because at the time, from 2001 through 2008, I was administrator and co-owner of MansonUSA.com, which was a big fan site. And, we had a forum and everything else, and we did several exclusive interviews with him. And so I did like a lot of the graphics and things like that for the site with my good friend, Alex, who was the person that started the whole thing. So I got lucky, and I met Manson for the first time after a show in Philly, and it was awesome because I was a huge fan at the time. I was 21. I'm 39 now, and so that was the first time. And then I met him again in like 2004, 5-ish, I believe. And after that, it was 2007 and 2008 was the primary time that we spent a significant amount of time after shows and backstage and on the tour bus and things like that.
Basically, because you're president of this fan club and whatever, that you're basically allowed to go on tour with him, right?
Yeah. We had for the tour from 2007 and 2008, which was called Rape of the World Tour. We had the irony, right?
He must be guilty. He must be guilty because of
yeah, exactly. We had all access passes, so that was pretty awesome to just experience that. It's I think back on it now, and it's like just memories that I cherish. It was quite the experience.
You said that when we talked earlier that you were around one of these periods of time when you were on tour with them, that you were around and Evan Rachel Wood. This is when they were dating. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So the tour that I was primarily spent the most amount of time with Manson, 2007, 2008, that was when Evan was on tour with him. So I had met her on that tour. And then, most of the times that we hung out backstage or on the bus or whatever, she was there. Usually it was, a small group of us, my friends, and we were all part of the site. And we were primarily hanging out with just him and Evan. The band was typically on their own bus, and, we would hang out with them as well. But for the most part, after the shows, if everything with the show went well and Manson was in a good mood, which understandably, sometimes he's not, I can get it as an artist, we would go back and hang out with them. And, we would be there until 2-3 in the morning. And it was, quite a bit of time. I'd say probably 20 shows total for that tour. So, you think about, amounts of times like 3-4 hours a shot. So that's a good amount of time, I would say.
Sort of sounds fairly like intimate, right? It's not just
like a very like comfortable setting. There wasn't like groups of people there where, he had to put on a certain persona and, act a certain way in the public, like if he'd do signings and things like that. It wasn't like that. It was very, I guess you could say, intimate, like you said. And, they were very relaxed, and yeah, it was just a very chill environment. So, yeah.
And you hung out and you were around Evan Rachel Wood a lot, right?
Yes. Yes.
With
Yeah.
Was she with the whole time when you were around?
Primarily, yes. There was a couple shows in like 2008, the second leg of the tour, where she wasn't there, but pretty much all 2007 she was there, and at least part of 2008 she was. So yeah, it would even go to the point of we would see her. We would actually be like, backstage while Manson was getting ready and things like that for the show. And we would see her backstage, or we would see her outside on the back parts of the venue. and we'd be like smoking cigarettes and things like that and just talking. And, that was, to be honest, I liked her a lot at that point, she was.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but so you're saying that
That's
you would
okay.
have conversations with her, like it wasn't just, oh, she's over there with Manson, but like you were interacting on a more one-on-one. Okay. Basis.
We would have just like, regular conversations about a variety of things. And never did I see anything, never did I have her even seem sad or bothered, or she certainly wasn't forced to be there or anything like that. She was, in so many words, having the time of her life, in my opinion.
Did you see, so you saw her and Manson together, right?
Right. After the shows, they would be together. To be honest, Manson had her around like most of the time, because he was, he wanted her to be around. It was like, in my opinion, they seemed to have a good relationship. He enjoyed her company. He was never short or angry or like demanding or trying to get her to stay here when she didn't want to be there. She knew exactly what she was doing. She enjoyed herself, and which, as things have gone now, is a completely different view that she puts off now.
So when you were around them, did you ever see him being controlling or mean or domineering, or did she ever seem like she was like uncomfortable with him or afraid or controlled or anything like that?
No, I never saw anything like that. I never saw aggression. I never saw her being, like I said, she was never upset, and I'm talking like even times, like I said, when we were just talking with just her, it was like our small group of people. She was there and we'd be talking, and like, she never seemed upset. She never seemed bothered by anything, Now I know people can like hide that sort of thing, but it was after this certain amount of time, we were like regulars in their company. So, I would like to say that there was a good amount of comfort, between parties. So, I never saw anything even like that at all, which is why when she came forward, I was completely shocked, to be honest. If I could go back at that time and someone would say like, oh, well, he's being accused of these allegations from Evan Rachel Wood, I'd be like, what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I never would have believed that would happen, just based on their relationship and, what I saw.
The question is, though, like, can people hide things to the extent that you, over the course of days and hours in their company, when they're tired at the end of the day, when they've let their guard down, when maybe they're intoxicated or whatever, and you're still not seeing any undertones of any kind of abusiveness on his part, or any kind of like anger or lashing out or fear with her? I mean, never picked up on anything like that, right?
No, absolutely. Pretty much exactly what you said. I mean, I never picked up on any of that. And, I'd like to think that I'm pretty good about picking up on emotions like that from people. And, I never thought that ever. Like, it really seemed like she was having the time of her life. I mean, you figure she was 20, and she was traveling the world and just having a blast, I mean, she was a fan of his before she even got with him. So.
Oh, really? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. She says she plays it off a little bit differently. But, there's interviews that she's done where she's talked about her being like, a fan of his music and just how he made her feel like free and like positive towards like her, you know, creativity and just the freedom of his like no judgment sort of outlook, you know, which is, that's the thing about Manson. He's, you know, very open when it comes to, you know, doing anything creatively, you know, or just if you want to act a certain way, you know, he's not the type of person that you have to like, you know, there might be people that have had situations where you feel like you have to walk on eggshells or something like that with him. But I personally never experienced that with him.
So
I
he
would
didn't have,
say,
like, or you never observed this like crazy megalomaniacal
right,
character?
exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I never experienced that, you know. He's always
Were
a
you ever
very
stay in a dark room with blackout curtains where you had to wear cave lamps to get
yeah, I mean, I will say that he does like a darker space, but you know, I typically like a darker space. So,
see that?
you know,
Yeah.
what does that really say? I mean, it doesn't mean that we're sitting back there in the dark, like not being able to see anything. And like, I certainly don't think it's a threatening environment, you know? So,
Did you ever see, so in the time that you were around them, did you, just to get really in the weeds, did you ever see him behave toward her in any way in which you were kind of like, "Ugh, you know, I wouldn't want someone talking to my sister or my mom that way, like mean, or there was any kind of a like slightly
no,
like, domineering or chauvinistic or controlling, anything like that?"
no, no, absolutely not. I mean, he, in my opinion, he truly loved her. I mean, we're talking about a guy that got divorced, uh, and he wrote an entire album that was basically like she was his muse. You know, for someone to do that as an artist, uh, you have to be very, very into someone to
Well,
go to those lengths. You
I
know, so
but you know what people are going to say? They're going to say, well, yeah, that's right. He was into her, but he was also this like monster. He was, you know, torturing her
right.
and all of this. But it sounds like what you're saying, like you never saw any shade of anything threatening at
No,
all.
no,
Yeah.
no. I never even saw her or saw him snap at her or, you know, like I said, no aggression whatsoever towards her. There's the one photo that I showed you where we were on the tour bus, and you know, he actually wanted her to be in the photo, the one that he's holding her, and they're posing together. You know, so it was like, I think his assistant at the time snapped a photo of that, and you know, he wanted her to be in the photo, so it was like, you know, it wasn't like you know, get over here, be in this photo sort of like attitude. It was like, hey, come over here, you know, like just very like loving, you know. That was the opinion that I have, is that he was loving towards her, you know, and he actually cared. I never saw him get angry or, you know, certainly not violent or anything like that, you know.
Did
And the
in the time, and you spent some time, you said, alone with her. I mean, where it'd be like the two of you hanging out. Is that right?
yeah, I mean, that was primarily, like I said, for example, even like through certain shows, like we'd, you know, take a smoke break or something, and we'd go outside of the venue, and we'd be like, hey, she's out there, like, you know, smoking, and we'd just like shoot the shit for a little bit. So there was a variety of times that, you know, it was only her. You know, I can't, in my opinion, like if someone feels abused, she hit it awfully well, because I never saw her even being in a bad mood back there. It was like she was, like I said, having the time of her life. I mean, so yeah, I mean, I never, it's
Did she ever
complete.
fearful of Manson, or kind of like, like sort of like I've known women in sort of abusive circumstances where like you can tell they're watching their words, they're kind of trying to manage their partner and kind of, that sort of thing.
No.
You seem carefree.
Yeah. No, nothing like that. And I've known people who have been in like what I would say abusive relationships, or even if it's not physical or if it's verbal or whatever, and completely different temperament from people that I've known in those situations. I mean, she was never like careful about what she said. It wasn't like, oh, I got to be careful what I say, or I'm going to get Manson's going to be mad at me, or, it was nothing like that whatsoever. She was very open and typically always in a good mood, seemed like it to me. And I'm sure that my friends would attest to that as well. So, yeah.
So when, people like the Mansons, one time, I guess, brief assistant, what was his name? Dan Cleary, or when Wes Borland, when they claimed that everything that was said is true, and they saw and Evan Rachel Wood had like an aura of darkness around her and all like
yeah,
that just doesn't agree with you at all based on what you saw.
No. Even come to talk, I don't even remember Dan Cleary there personally. I think he was a guitar tech or something like that. But he was, I never even really saw him around, it wasn't like he was never like hanging out with all of us or anything like that. Like he wasn't an assistant.
Probably it's more likely that you spent more time around Manson and Rachel Wood than Dan Cleary, perhaps.
I mean, I would say that probably at least in that time frame. And I think that he was only around for a certain amount of time.
He was the guitar tech at that point. It was only later that he worked for Manson as a personal assistant for a brief period of time. And a lot of people don't know that, and so they conflate the two, and they'll say, "Oh, even his personal assistant said that Evan Rachel Wood seemed really dark in that period." Well, he, that's not when he was the personal assistant. That's when he was the guitar tech and not really hanging out with them. But anyway.
Yeah. Right.
But like, like Wes Borland, people like that, not that what's going through their head or why they would say stuff like that, but that just doesn't that's just not your experience then, just of seeing her as being someone who seemed like oppressed or troubled or in a cloud of darkness or anything like that.
No, absolutely not.
I don't know much. I don't actually follow all of this stuff in music. So I don't know like Wes Borland or even what his deal is. It seems like almost like people just want to jump on the bandwagon with some of this stuff.
As far as I know, Wes Borland was never even truly in the band. I believe he played a show or two shows.
Oh, really?
At like a festival or something like that. So he was never around, like the way he put it out. Like it was like he was around, like on tour, like, several shows and like experienced all this stuff with them and like.
It promoted it. It was like, oh, this guy who was in Marilyn Manson's band says that it's all
exactly. And I believe that Manson like didn't want him in. So in my opinion, there's like a bitterness there with him.
Oh, really?
After that happened, I know Manson like kicked him out because originally he was gonna have him in. And I don't personally know what happened exactly with them, but after that point, there was definitely I would say just bitterness towards Manson. So, and that doesn't surprise me.
I'm glad you said that or brought that out, because, that's the thing that a lot of people don't get is like, once someone is accused of stuff like this, then it's such an opportunity then for people. Everybody loves free media. Everybody. It's some kind of like, it's some kind of basic human thing, and we're not, any different per se. We're talking on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it an easy shot to take.
Yeah.
If you have any pent up hostility towards someone and they're already, it's like kicking them when they're down and just jumping on because, at that point they have so much being thrown at them that it's like, what's he going to be able to do if I come out and say
Well,
this?
yes,
You know what I
and
mean?
I think they also feel morally justified because it's easy to say, oh, well, he must be a rapist. Look at what Evan Rachel Wood, these people, what they're saying about him. So it's not like I'm attacking an innocent man. I'm just helping, right? I'm just
Right.
adding more, validation
Yeah.
to that. And then once something like this happens, everybody's reaching back in their mind to think of like some instance where he said something, off key, or he did something weird or whatever. And it's very,
Yeah, absolutely. It would be easy at that point for people to, and like you, I think back on that and I'm like, man, like if the same thing happened, obviously I'm not, famous or anything like that, like Manson, so it wouldn't be the same scale, but I can think like, I'm sure there's people that, aren't happy with me that would, jump on the bandwagon very, they would just do it just because why not?
right.
And the other thing is like Manson's entire career, he's been sort of the poster boy for blame. I mean, he's been blamed for everything. So it's an easy shot for people to take. And if someone doesn't like him, and people are free not to like him or whatever, they had a bad experience with him. It's just like, it's so easy for them to just say it because people aren't going to question them. They're just going to, oh yeah, like here's another person that said this, like just especially like the lack of critical thinking that people have in general. People are so quick to believe anything just because people said it. Whether they're women or men, regardless. I think that people should always be very careful and look at both sides and, come up with a good viewpoint on it that's not like, oh, the media said it, like I'm going to believe it, or even just, people, and with, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say with the accusers as a group, a lot of people think, as you've covered in other videos, like they're not just random women, like they all knew each other. They all, articulated a plan. So it's not like just random people coming out and voicing these opinions or these experiences. It's all, in my opinion, fabricated, at least to the most extent. And they knew that in numbers, it's especially hard to defend.
Yeah, it was well coordinated with the timing. Yeah. And I understand too, you're talking about the reasons why people fall for this stuff. There's something just on a basic sort of evolutionary level that when we see a woman crying and saying someone has abused her, like,
yeah.
and we see, so Esme Bianco and Evan Rachel Wood, when they're sniffling through their testimony in the California Assembly, and they're trying to get this rape legislation passed and everything and stuff. I mean, it takes some restraint to see through that and to not just be like, oh my God, but I think actually coming at this as a woman, I can say as a woman that I think people would be pretty surprised sometimes as to how easy it is to fake emotion and to fake tears, and also how when people are a little messed up in the head or they're incentivized, that they can bend reality to suit their impression.
In my opinion, she seems like a completely different person.
You mean than when you knew her back then?
Yeah. From when I knew her then, to at least the persona she puts off now, she just seems like a completely different person. The way she dresses, the way she acts. To be honest, she lost her cool factor, in my opinion. She was actually fun back then, and now.
What was she? Since bringing up, what was she? Since you were around her some, what was she like? Or if someone said, "Hey, you hung out with Rachel Wood," what was she like back then?
I would say she's fun, you know, like a typical 20-year-old or whatever. You know, she was young, she was happy. She was always pretty talkative. She was never quiet or like, you know, timid or anything like that. You know, I mean, you could tell that she was an actress. She was comfortable in front of people and talking, and, you know, she never seemed shy or anything like that. It's actually funny because I would say Manson was more shy than she was, and yet, you know, there's Manson on stage doing his shows, but he's much more, you know, low key, I'd say. You know, that one photo that I sent you was a joke when we were backstage with the ass to ass, which was the wife of my one friend. That just kind of shows you like her mind state, and like it was all fun. You know, it was a fun environment, and that shows her attitude back then. You know, I mean, could you imagine her doing that now? No way. You know, she would never do that. So, you know, just a completely different person now, in my opinion. Now, I know people grow up and everything, but, you know, I think back to myself from then, and, you know, yeah, I've, you know, maybe matured a little bit, but like, I'm not a completely different person that I was then. So either it's some kind of act, or she has like some type of mental issues going on that it's really hard to say, you know. Like there's also the aspect of her with her current ex or whatever, where she's blaming him for abuse. So, you know, there's a lot of this stuff that I think is all connected, that a lot of people, unless you look into it, don't really see the underlying connections, you know. Yep.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, well, there's one thing that I will say is in her statement, I believe she had said that he isolated her from her family and things like that. Yeah, yeah. Evan Rachel Wood had said that Manson had isolated her from her family, and, you know, didn't allow them there and everything else. Well, we, you know, my small group of friends, we had actually met her parents at I believe it was Miami. It was at the Hard Rock. I believe it was at Miami or something like that. But we were backstage, and we actually got to meet them. And, you know, the reason I'm bringing that up is it's like, if he's so hell-bent on keeping her separated, like, would you really give them VIP and like to an open bar and like just the whole VIP experience of being back there if you were trying to keep them away? You know, that doesn't jive with me at all. Like that makes no sense, you know. And you know, they seemed decent to me. You know, I think I met them twice, and they were both backstage in the VIP.
Met Evan Rachel Wood's parents twice on this
Yeah.
20-day tour period that you were with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he isolated her from her family so much that he invited them to be around twice in a 20-day period.
Right. Well, I mean, they might have even been there more than that, to be honest. I don't know.
But you personally around twice in 20-day period.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. But yeah, like 2 times through the shows that we saw, where we actually met them.
You never saw him acting like sullen or mean for the parents or Evan Rachel Wood or away or whatever. Yeah.
Nope, nothing like that. So yeah, I brought that up just because I thought that was odd, you know. Plus there's plenty of photos, like, you know, I know that you're aware of the Instagram account Stand By Your Manson, but they have a ton of really great content, and you know, just pokes so many holes in all this stuff. And there's photos on there of Evan and Manson with her family. You know, they're in like Disney World, and, you know, like one's like in Christmas time, and like they all look happy, and it's like, you know, Manson the family man, like, you know, I don't believe that for a second that he was like, you know, trying to keep them away from her or anything like that. And in my opinion, if there was any of that, it was probably from her. Like she was sort of a rebel kind of, that was her like kind of mentality then, I think, so.
That's what she projected, being really like
Yeah.
tough and focused and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not,
Yeah,
not who was like basically like a sort of a submissive, naive, inexperienced teenager that was being
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just laughable in my opinion. She knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't like this, like, dumb little girl that, that's how she liked to. I was a child, I think she called herself, like, in her testimony. And it's like, come on, give me a break. Like, you were 20, 21, you knew what you were doing. Like, she didn't act that way at all. Like, she partied. It was nothing like that at all. He wasn't there manipulating her to do all these things or drink or whatever. Like, she was, like I said before, she was having the time of her life, enjoying herself, which who the hell wouldn't, if you're in that experience and you're of that age. So yeah, not even in the slightest.
Wow. Was there something else that you wanted to mention too?
One other thing that I would just say, which just kind of shows like his attitude toward her, as far as like thoughtfulness, as like, in one of the photos that I sent you, like, I presented a painting to Manson that I did, which he owns, which was like my homage to Edgar Allan Poe. And Evan was a huge fan, was or is a huge fan of Edgar Allan Poe, and has actually a tattoo on her neck, I believe, from a quote from Poe. And when I presented it to Manson, he was like very excited to show her, because he knew that she was into Poe. Like, oh, look at what he's given me. Like, he was like, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or anything, like, but he was happy to receive it, and he was happy to show her. So in my opinion, it was just like a subtle thing. A lot of people might say, oh, that's nothing, but it's one of those things, like, it's like, if you get something and that someone's going to enjoy it, you want to share it with them, or just to get their reaction about it. So that's really, just that little thing that I thought was interesting.